Hello and welcome back to Just for Fun. This is Matt again. Today we're going to be the bad guy. A lot of the time when you brew, you want to make a deck that's different, that's new, that's exciting, that beats the best deck. And then sometimes you just want to play the best deck. And Today we're going to play Delver in Pauper. We're going to see if we can get a couple good matches in. This is the mono blue Delver. This is the old Delver. I know that there's a blue-red version, which you see me play against if you saw my cycling song video. But this is the one that I'm used to playing. Now I've tweaked it, of course. There's a lot of room for tweaking in this list. There's some things that are pretty much set in stone, and there are a lot of things that can be moved around quite a bit, so it's very versatile. Blue is possibly the most powerful color in Magic. In Pauper, it errs to that side because a lot of the old blue cards were just way more powerful than they would be if they were printed now, right? Like, we don't get card selection and counter spells at the same mana cost as we used to. So I'd like to thank Art, shout out Art, for helping me with my list. I've kind of taken his list and my list and smushed them together and made kind of like a decent middle ground kind of list here. So let's talk about it. Let's break it down. For lands, we've got 15 islands and 3 other lands. We've got 2 lonely sandbars. You don't really need that many land in this deck. I know it looks like we have 5, 6, and 8 drops in here, but really none of these cards are getting cast at their cost. None of these in this column, this 13. Pretty much everything lies on the 3 or less end of the curve, which is how you get away with playing so few land. And late in the game, you might be wanting to cycle for an answer, so sandbar's decent, but we don't want too many because we don't want that many lands that come into play tapped. Quicksand is just there as a removal spell on the ground, doesn't hurt our mana base too much because we're playing monocolored, right? So the namesake of the deck, you know him, you love him, you hate him, either or both. Delver of Secrets, you've seen him in every format, from standard to vintage. And he's a dude. He flips. He becomes a bigger dude. He attacks. He's quite a threat at all times. And in this deck, we're playing lots of spells and lots of, and a few manipulation cards to be able to get there and cast him, flip him over. So what other creatures are we playing? We've got Cloud of Fairies. This is just an all-around good card in a deck with a lot of counter spells. It's basically a free 1/1 flyer. So you cast it, it untaps 2 of your lands, or it cycles, which I almost never use the cycling ability, but late in the game when a 1/1 flyer is not going to help, it couldn't hurt to cycle it, sure. Why do we want to cast this card? Well, it reopens your mana for counter spells. So a lot of the trouble with counter spell heavy decks is that you can't play your threats out and keep mana up. So this lets you play a threat, albeit a minor one, and keep mana up for counter spells. This is also a fairy, so it buffs our next creature, Spell Stutter Sprite. So on turn 2, if you go Cloud of Fairies into mana open and then have Spell Stutter Sprite, you can counter a 2-drop basically for free, because you're getting basically 2 1/1 flyers out of the deal. Few other creatures in the deck. We have Ninja of the Deep Hours. Basically, dude ninjas in. He caps a dude in a library and he steals a scroll. No, he allows you to get card advantage, draw extra cards by sneaking them in, and all of your flyers here, are also really good for returning to your hand because this buys you another counter spell, and this is just free to recast. So you don't really mind the ninjutsu drawback if you're recasting your threat anyway, right? So that's not a big deal. How do we make, one more creature, Spire Golem. which is basically, theoretically, it costs 6, but it never costs 6 because every time you play an island, it costs 1 less. Typically, you're playing this on turn 3 for 3, or later on in the game, you might just throw it out there for free, or or for cheap. What a bargain! Um, Now you'll notice there's not a lot of power on these dudes. How do we end the game? Well, Bone Splitter helps. There's a couple of those in there just to get a faster clock on the board in the late game. Hope your little threats and the opponent's life total. Now, what is all this other stuff? Well, how do we stay alive long enough for these little dudes to matter? Well, we've got cantrips, right? So we've got Ponder. Right now I'm doing a 3-1 split. I just love Preordain, so I've been playing for Preordains this whole time, but Art's kind of sold me on Ponder being better, so I'm going to try it out here. I was able to find 3 of them, so we'll just do a 3-1 split for the sake of that's what cards I had. Counterspell, the original OG Counterspell, upsetting people's plans since day one. Hopefully this is like a mana advantage spell in the sense that your opponent plays something that costs 3 or more, and you're countering it for 2. Well, yeah, you're 1-for-1ing on cards, but maybe you're trading up on mana usage, and that's one of the theories of how you win is by using your mana more efficiently than your opponent. So between Counterspell, Spellstutter Sprite, and Memory Elapse and Exclude, we have just a really a gross amount of counterspells. Exclude is counterspell and counter target creature spell, draw a card. So this is another little way to sneak in another card advantage spell. Memory Elapse, okay, a lot of people play Deprive or Mana Leak in this spot, or I was playing Miscalculation at one point, which is a good card, but this really is just a huge tempo hit. After playing the mono black deck a lot, which I'll show you guys at some point also, and playing Chittering Rats and seeing how annoying it is and how much it tilts your opponent to not draw a card for a turn. So this is basically like Remand in a sense, because, you're not drawing a card deeper into your deck, but you're slowing your opponent's draw down by 1. So it's kind of like Remand, right? So really you're just buying time, and I like it. It's an annoying tilting card. So yeah, maybe Deprive would be good too, but that's kind of like negative tempo yourself as opposed to this being negative tempo your opponent. So that's why the card's in here. Snap is a free unsummon, and so you'll have these crazy turns where you'll go, okay, Cloud of Fairies, untap my 2 lands, snap, untap my 2 lands, pass with spell starter or counter spell up. I mean, it's just a good way to get lots of advantage. And speaking of advantage, rounding out the deck, we have 6 bomb card draw spells. Before cons, there were 4 rushes in the deck. Now I've gone with 4 cruises, and I've thrown in. I kept 2 gushes in there because gush is just nut later on in the game. It costs you basically nothing, and you just draw cards. Plus, it's since it costs you nothing, it's just another free way to toss a spell for a treasure cruise. And we're just going to outdraw our opponents. Really, that's the game plan. As far as the sideboard goes, basically these 4 cards are real sideboard cards, and the rest of this is kind of just stuff I threw in there because I'm not really sure what. I mean, I think you want Hydroblast or Blue Elemental Blast in the deck in the sideboard, but maybe Dispel would be good. Actually, I have Dispel. I could probably throw that in there, but I'm just kind of working with what I've got. Yeah, maybe Dispel is better than something in here. Well, anyway, Serrated Arrows is removal. It's another way to get advantage. Hopefully you can kill a couple creatures with one of these. Frostburn Weird is a way to gum up the ground or finish the game fast. These were in the main deck. I took them out to go to add the gushes back in. But I might see fit to put these back in the deck. Curfew actually is sort of legit because Hexproof can be a hard matchup because they can go under your counter spells if they're on the play. Once they land a dude, you're in pretty big trouble. But you could pay one, bounce one of their dudes and your dude, and it kind of hurts them more because you're getting back Cloud of Fairies or Spellstutter Sprite, which is fine, and they're losing all their enchantments on their dude. So this is there for the Hexproof matchup. I could see it being good against Kiln Fiend, Nivik Cyclops deck also, because they're investing a lot of spells into their creature to pump it or infect, and they rely on Apostle's Blessing usually to avoid getting their creature removed. So this is like sort of non-targeted removal. So I kind of like this in the sideboard, and then the rest of this stuff is just really not for any particular purpose. So I'm not going to waste any more time talking about it. All right, let's see if we can get in some games and be the bad guy.